In the grim and chaotic expanse of World War I's battlefields between 1914 and 1918, relentless armies clashed with a ferocity and a level of technological innovation hitherto unseen. Fueled by the fervor of nationalism, the Battle of Verdun, occurring in 1916 between the entrenched lines of the French and German armies, emerged as a profound embodiment of the horrors and the ingenuity of evolved warfare. Ingenious yet horrific traps and weapons were laid and used, and devices of unprecedented lethality were detonated, transforming the landscape into arenas of despair. But what were these mechanisms of destruction designed to devastate, demoralize, maim, and kill? And how did they shape the narrative of this pivotal conflict for the rest of the Great War? From the obvious yet cruel barbed wire to shrapnel shells to the concealed peril of poisonous gas, these weapons were not merely implements of battle, but beacons of a new era in armed conflict, and but a sample of the horrors humanity would inflict upon itself in the coming century. Despite the immense loss of life, echoing the words of military historian John Keegan, the First World War was a war of invention and mass production. The weapons and traps of Verdun epitomized this evolution, instilling fear in adversaries and compelling them to engage enemies as formidable in their engineering as they were in direct combat. Join us as we traverse the devastated fields and trenches of the Great War, uncovering the dark utilization of traps and strategic deterrents that sowed terror among those brave enough to face them. Welcome to the Chronicles of the Raven. Viewer discretion is advised for the rest of this video, as some of it may be offensive or disturbing. This video is only intended to shed a historical light on the violence and cruelty of World War I. Chapter 1. Barbed wire and sniper traps, metal forests of torture. Before exploring the brutality of the Battle of Verdun and how these traps were used for mass carnage, we must delve into the world of World War I weapons and traps, and few were as understated and devastating as barbed wire. Simple yet effective, these were not mere obstacles but a deadly apparatus designed to maim, snag, and slow down any force daring enough to confront the entrenched lines. A simple wound could become fatal due to the copious spread of disease and bacteria. Barbed wire, with its sharp entangling strands, was driven deep into the ground, forming dense barriers that could catch the flesh and gear of attackers, tearing through their ranks with cruel efficiency. Positioned around trenches or in the path of enemy advances, barbed wire turned no man's land into fields of slaughter. It was used in such vast amounts that by 1918, one expert suggests that almost 1 million miles of barbed wire had been laid in Flanders, Belgium alone, enough to circle the Earth 40 times. As the tumult of the First World War erupted across Europe, barbed wire had already claimed its place within the arsenals of the continent's militaries. Following the First Battle of the Marne, as the Western Front descended into a morass of static trench warfare, the no-man's land between opposing forces became choked with ever-growing thickets of barbed wire. The appetite of the war machine for this material seemed insatiable as factories toiled to meet the demand. Laid in intricate patterns of zigzags or in dense belts parallel to the trenches, barbed wire created a formidable barrier that could span several rows and extend dozens of feet in depth. Some of these metallic vines were crafted to ensnare the legs of attackers, a mere knee-high hazard, while others, more imposing, rose 6 feet or more, a stark deterrent against any direct onslaught. Notably, the fields of wire that guarded the infamous Hindenburg Line, a testament to German engineering, could stretch up to 300 feet into the desolate expanse of no man's land. These barbed barriers were not merely passive obstructions. They were meticulously designed to guide unsuspecting enemy soldiers into lethal machine gun fire. A grim harvest awaited those who dared to approach. Amidst this thicket of steel, engineers, masters of their grim craft, devised wire traps of deceptive cunning. These gaps in the barriers, inviting yet treacherous, lured soldiers into preordained corridors of death, where they would be cut down without mercy. In the shadowed theater of the Western Front, where the specter of death loomed eternal, there existed a role fraught with peril and shrouded in silence, the members of the wiring parties. Night after night, these brave souls were summoned from the relative safety of their trenches into the desolate expanse of no man's land. Their mission, to mend the shattered skeins of barbed wire or to birth new barriers under the cloak of darkness. With hearts heavy and hands steady, these soldiers would hammer stakes into the unforgiving earth. their efforts masked by rubber mallets and blankets, a vain attempt to stifle the sound of their toil. As they unspooled the wire, a task as delicate as it was dangerous, the night air was punctuated by the sharp crack of flares, turning darkness into day at a moment's notice. Each flare's ghostly light forced them to abandon their work and seek the embrace of the earth, praying to remain unseen by enemy eyes. The completion of even a single stretch of wire was an endeavor that spanned several hours, a testament to both the importance of the task and the courage required to undertake it. The proximity of the enemy added a palpable tension to these nocturnal excursions. In some cursed stretches of the front, where the distance between opposing forces was but a mere 100 yards, the darkness could become a chaotic meeting ground. Wiring parties, each unaware of the other's presence, might stumble upon one another in the void, their encounter dictated by chance and shadow. Ingenious minds from both factions dedicated vast efforts to enhance the malevolence of barbed wire. They crafted points that were longer, sharper, and clustered more densely to inflict maximum damage. The wire itself was strengthened to withstand corrosion, gunfire, artillery, and attempts at cutting. In a bid to reduce costs, German engineers developed an innovative, more cost-effective version of barbed wire. Termed concertina, barbed tape, or razor wire, this new creation was fashioned from cheap sheet metal, meticulously die-cut into lengthy strips. This iteration proved even more formidable on the battlefield than its traditional counterpart, presenting an even greater challenge to navigate. Behind these barbed wire forests were frequently used sniper traps. Often decoys or meticulously planned shooting positions were the first line of psychological and physical deterrence, a fatal game of cat and mouse. Once an enemy was caught or lured by a sniper trap, they were exposed to gunfire and artillery. Within the shadowed realms of warfare, especially noted during the tumultuous periods of World War I and World War II, the art of the sniper trap emerged as a cunning stratagem. These traps, embodying simplicity yet brimming with lethal efficacy, were ingeniously designed to coax enemy snipers into betraying their concealed posts. The method: the strategic placement of decoys, be it dummies, helmets perched upon sticks, or various objects cunningly arranged to mimic the presence of a soldier. Such lures were set with the intent to provoke a shot from the hidden sniper, a shot that would, in turn, unveil their position to vigilant counter-snipers lying in wait. This game of deadly deception played out in the silence between shots, a silent testament to the chess-like strategy of warfare, where revealing one's position could mean the ultimate checkmate. Chapter 2. Poison Gas. The Silent Killer. While the Battle of Verdun is known as one of attrition and French bravery against the cruel onslaught of the German army, and barbed wire and sniper traps were used across the war as in this battle, a new evil was raised that brought a new level of terror to the battlefields of World War I: poison gas. A sometimes invisible and insidious killer, and other times a surprising violent cloud of foretold death. Hidden behind the lines or delivered through artillery, these weapons awaited the unsuspecting or the reckless, ready to unleash their destructive power. The deployment of poison gas required careful planning and execution. Canisters filled with lethal chemicals were released, drifting towards enemy lines with the wind, then filling trenches, dugouts, and craters with deadly fumes. The stakes were often treated with a mix of technology and terror, utilizing chemistry to increase their lethality. One might assume gas attacks were camouflaged as a natural element and blended with the air until their presence was betrayed only by the sudden onset of choking, blindness, and death. But it was a lot more sinister and complicated. The story of chemical warfare's emergence in World War I unfolds with an early act by France, utilizing tear gas in the form of allyl bromide or ethyl bromoacetate in the opening months of the conflict. These initial forays, employing compounds with benign scents such as pleasant and aromatic or fruity and pungent, respectively, might have seemed almost innocuous but for their insidious intent. Yet, as lacrimators, a tear-creating agent, their impact was limited, provoking tears and temporary blindness, but failing to yield a substantial tactical advantage. This was but a prelude to the more ominous developments that lay ahead. Germany's entry into the realm of chemical warfare marked a dark milestone with the deployment of chlorine gas at Ypres in 1915. The program, headed up by Fritz Haber, attempted their first use with chlorine gas. This virulent agent, with its deceptively sweet scent, revealed the catastrophic potential of gas as a weapon of war. Unprotected soldiers found themselves engulfed in a toxic cloud that could sear the lungs and dissolve the delicate tissues within, leading to a torturous demise. The initial deployment of chlorine was shockingly effective, yet its very success was unanticipated by its users, who failed to fully exploit the chaos it wrought, a true trap unleashed upon the ignorant, who could never have expected such violence. Chlorine was deadly against unprotected soldiers. It is estimated over 1,100 were killed in its first use at Ypres. Chlorine's usefulness was short-lived. Its color and odor made it easy to spot, and due to being water-soluble, the countermeasures devised by soldiers, rudimentary yet resourceful, underscored the grim ingenuity of trench warfare. Water-soaked cloths, even those dampened with urine, offered a modicum of protection against chlorine's corrosive embrace. Moreover, the deployment of gas as a cloud introduced tactical challenges, a lesson harshly learned by the British during their attempt to utilize chlorine at Loos. Tragically, a change in the wind direction reversed the course of the gas, resulting in the British forces suffering from their own chemical attack as the poisonous cloud was blown back towards them. But the arms race of chemical warfare was quick to escalate, with each side seeking more lethal concoctions to breach these nascent defenses. Enter phosgene, the colorless spectre far more insidious than chlorine and much more deserving of the descriptor, trap. Its introduction by German forces represented a refinement in chemical warfare tactics, leveraging its delayed effects to inflict maximum devastation before its presence was even known. The initial exposure to phosgene betrayed no immediate symptoms, lulling soldiers into a false sense of security until it was far too late. This horror was also a downside to the gas, as it could take up to 48 hours for the symptoms to show. Phosgene's extreme toxicity stems from its reaction with lung proteins, specifically within the alveoli. This interaction damages the crucial barrier between blood and air, ultimately causing suffocation. The ensuing pulmonary edema, a silent drowning from within, highlighted the cruel efficiency of this new weapon. It is estimated that as many as 85% of the 91,000 gas deaths were a result of phosgene, yet it was mustard gas that would come to epitomize the abject horror of chemical warfare in World War I. This compound, capable of lingering in the soil, inflicted indiscriminate suffering on friend and foe alike, its oily residue burning flesh and mucous membranes alike. The blisters and respiratory distress it caused were emblematic of the war's brutality, leaving survivors scarred and maimed, their lives forever altered by their exposure. Initial contact with mustard gas often presents no immediate symptoms, making it difficult to recognize exposure until skin irritation manifests, by which point it is too late for preventative actions. Although the death rate from mustard gas exposure was relatively low at 2 to 3%, the survivors faced prolonged medical treatment for chemical burns and respiratory issues. Moreover, those who recovered were believed to be at an increased risk of cancer later in life. The battlefield, transformed into a hellscape by these chemical agents, bore witness to the tragic irony of scientific progress turned towards mankind's destruction. The coding of artillery shells, a macabre taxonomy of death, served to categorize the various agents of despair, each color heralding a different form of agony. Despite accounting for less than 1% of the war's total fatalities, the psychological impact of chemical warfare was immense, and paranoia could not have been higher for what gas weapon could possibly be next. As a result, the use of gas in warfare was explicitly banned by the Geneva Protocol in 1925. While there have been instances of its use thereafter, none have reached the scale observed in World War I. Yet, the legacy of these weapons and the ethical quagmires they introduced persisted. The tale of Fritz Haber, the Nobel laureate whose genius facilitated both the nourishment of billions and the deaths of thousands, encapsulates the paradox of scientific achievement wielded in the service of war. Chapter 3. Flamethrowers, the violent killers. The flamethrower, a device designed to unleash torrents of flame upon enemy fortifications, trenches, or dense infantry formations, made its fearsome debut on the Western Front. Its purpose was manifold: to clear enemy positions with a force that was both physically devastating and psychologically demoralizing. The sight and sound of these weapons in action were intended to instill fear, break morale, and force the enemy out of their dugouts and into the open. On the chilling dawn of 26th of February 1915, amidst the turmoil unfolding outside Verdun, the flamethrower etched its name into the annals of warfare, casting its fiery breath against the French for the first time. This harbinger of destruction revealed its terrifying potential in earnest on 30th of July 1915, during a relentless assault on British trenches at Hooge, where the combatants were a mere 4.5 meters apart. Yet, it was not the flames themselves that claimed the majority of lives, but the ensuing chaos, as soldiers, driven from the safety of their trenches, fell under a hail of bullets. The aftermath saw the British forces reel from the loss of 31 officers and 751 ranks over 2 days of fierce combat. Galvanized by the success of this fiery onslaught, the German army swiftly incorporated the flamethrower across all fronts, deploying squads of 6 to unleash hell at the onset of battle, clearing the path for the infantry that followed. This weapon, however, was no simple tool of war. It demanded strength and bravery to wield, its bulk and complexity making it a beast to manage. Safe operation was confined to the trenches, its effectiveness capped by the proximity of the enemy. Effective only when the opposing forces were within 18 meters, a rare alignment on the vast chessboard of the Great War. Moreover, its fury was fleeting, with fuel reserves burning out after but a minute of continuous use. A stark reminder of the flamethrower's brutal yet bounded role in the theater of conflict. As the war progressed, both the Allies and Central Powers refined the design and tactics of flamethrower use. Smaller, more portable units were developed, allowing for greater mobility and versatility on the battlefield. These advancements facilitated more strategic applications, including coordinated assaults where flamethrowers would precede infantry attacks to disrupt enemy defenses and create openings for advancing troops. The use of flamethrowers, while not as widespread as other weapons of the era, left an indelible mark on the collective memory of World War I. The psychological impact of facing such a weapon was profound, adding a new layer of terror to the already brutal experience of trench warfare. Beyond their immediate tactical advantages, flamethrowers represented the relentless escalation of warfare technology and the lengths to which nations would go to achieve victory amidst the stalemate of the Western Front. Chapter 4. Shrapnel Traps. Unexpected Terror. Shrapnel traps designed to unleash torrents of metal fragments upon unsuspecting soldiers. During the tumultuous era of World War I, the use of shrapnel rounds represented a blend of ingenuity and brutality, reflecting a relentless pursuit to refine the mechanics of war. The essence of these rounds lay in their deadly cargo, bullets designed with the precise intent to maim or kill, propelled by a calculated burst of gunpowder. The design was underpinned by two critical considerations: the energy required to incapacitate a soldier and the effective dissemination of this lethal payload over a desired area. A typical 3-inch field gun shell, when fired, combined its inherent velocity with an additional push from the bursting charge, endowing each shrapnel bullet with enough force to wreak havoc upon impact. This meticulous calibration ensured that, at optimal combat ranges, the shrapnel could deliver a punishing blow to enemy forces, far surpassing the minimum energy deemed necessary to disable a combatant. Yet the utility of shrapnel was not without its limitations, tethered as it was to the physics of its trajectory and the constraints of battlefield geography. The long-distance effectiveness of shrapnel was hampered by a loss of accuracy and a narrowed impact zone due to the steep descent of projectiles at extreme ranges. Conversely, at closer, more typical combat distances, the shrapnel shell's trajectory allowed for a more extended beaten zone, maximizing the area over which its bullets could rain destruction. The size of the shrapnel balls, therefore, was a balance between lethality and the practical considerations of range and accuracy, with larger guns compensating for lower velocities with bigger, more deadly projectiles. The tactical deployment of shrapnel shells, particularly by the British, illuminated both the weapon's strengths and its shortcomings. Initially hailed as a versatile anti-personnel weapon, shrapnel proved devastating against exposed infantry. However, as the war ground into a stalemate of trench warfare, its effectiveness waned, prompting a shift towards high-explosive shells better suited to breaching fortifications. Yet in specific roles, such as cutting barbed wire or providing creeping barrages, shrapnel found a renewed purpose, demonstrating its capacity to adapt to the evolving dynamics of the battlefield. Despite its drawbacks, including a higher cost and the technical challenge of precisely timing its fuse, shrapnel remained a fixture in the artillery arsenals of the war. Chapter 5. Booby traps, deadly retreats. In the twilight years of the Great War, as the fronts ebbed and flowed with the tides of battle, cunning yet perilous strategy emerged from the depths of desperation. Booby traps, set during orchestrated retreats, became a silent sentinel of the forsaken trenches. Chronicled by the voices of that time, this method of warfare was a testament to ingenuity born out of necessity, employing both the artifice of mechanical triggers and the suspense of delayed action fuses to sow chaos among the ranks of the advancing foe. In the shadowed retreats across the war-torn landscapes of Europe, as the Great War raged on to a close, a recently unearthed document from the archives reveals a sinister aspect of trench trap warfare. The document, Training Circular No. 21, utilized by the German 77th Division at Camp Upton in early 1918, provides a chilling insight into the calculated malice employed by retreating German forces. As they withdrew across the regions from Artois to the Aisne, these soldiers transformed the very trenches into a treacherous maze of hidden dangers, setting an array of booby traps designed to maim or kill the advancing Allied soldiers. The ingenuity of these traps was both remarkable and horrifying, showcasing a grim creativity in the art of war. One such trap involved was described as when a window weight is suspended by a string across the entrance of a shelter. When one enters, the string breaks, and the weight falls into a box of detonators which fire explosives. Another insidious trap detailed was where buried hand grenades are connected by telephone wire and explode when the wire is touched. Yet another trap turned the mundane act of ascending stairs into a potential deadly encounter. The step of a staircase is put in contact with a nail which touches the primer of a mine. These excerpts from the training circular not only underscore the perilous nature of advancing through territory hastily vacated by the enemy, but also reflect the broader theme of innovation born from desperation. Chapter 6. The Sea Decoys and Early Landmines. From the original Roman lilia pits to landmines, compromising the land beneath soldiers has always been devastating for advances. These explosive devices, buried out of sight, awaited the pressure of an unsuspecting foot to unleash destruction. Designed to halt the momentum of enemy advances and instill a persistent fear in those who navigated the battle-scarred territories. However, this technology was rudimentary and became much more of a feature during World War II. Improvised landmines in the form of buried artillery shells were used in World War I, and while the Germans would create landmine devices to combat tank advances, they did not have as much a purpose during World War strategy due to trench warfare. However, in the shadowed waters of the Great War, the Royal Navy of Britain unveiled a cunning strategy to counter the lurking menace of German submarines, the deployment of Q-ships. These vessels, masquerading as civilian sailing ships or weathered tramp steamers, were wolves in sheep's clothing, harboring concealed artillery beneath their innocuous exteriors. The Q-ships sailed with a singular purpose: to present themselves as easy prey, enticing German U-boats to reveal their positions with the promise of an easy kill. The ploy was a masterful stroke of naval strategy, exploiting the U-boats' preference to conserve their precious torpedoes by surfacing to use deck guns on seemingly defenseless targets. Once a submarine took the bait and emerged from the depths to attack, the Q-ship would unfurl the Royal Navy's white ensign, a stark declaration of its true colors in accordance with the laws of war, and unleash its hidden firepower upon the unsuspecting predator. Over the course of 150 fraught encounters on the high seas, the Q-ship's ruse led to the destruction of 14 U-boats and inflicted damage on 60 others, a testament to the daring and deception of these decoy vessels. However, This game of maritime cat and mouse bore its share of losses, with 27 of Britain's 200 Q-ships falling victim to the very submarines they sought to ensnare. This silent war beneath the waves, where cunning and camouflage were as crucial as firepower, underscored the relentless innovation and adaptability that defined naval combat in the era of the Great War. Chapter 7. The Battle of Verdun. The Battle of Verdun, fought between the French and German armies from 21st February to 18th of December 1916, stands as one of the longest and most grueling conflicts of World War I, epitomizing the war's brutality and the concept of attritional warfare. Initiated by the German Fifth Army, under the command of Erich von Falkenhayn, the objective was to bleed France white by capturing the strategically significant Meuse Heights around Verdun-sur-Meuse. Falkenhayn believed that the French would commit all their reserves to defend this symbolic location, leading to enormous French casualties with minimal German effort. The Battle of Verdun, marked by its inception with a formidable German artillery onslaught, unleashed hundreds of thousands of shells upon the French lines, setting the stage for what would become one of the most harrowing chapters of World War I. This initial barrage was a prelude to the rapid German capture of Fort Douaumont, delivering a severe blow to the French defense system. Yet, the formidable resolve of the French forces, under the leadership of General Philippe Pétain, was encapsulated in his legendary directive, "Ils ne passeront pas," they shall not pass. Pétain's strategic acumen was evident in his innovative troop rotation system and the reinforcement of artillery defenses, which together forged a formidable bulwark against the German offensive, inflicting severe losses on the invaders. As the conflict dragged on, both adversaries found themselves ensnared in a gruesome deadlock, with casualty figures soaring on both sides. The German forces, in their quest to dominate the battlefield, expanded their offensive operations across the Meuse River, aiming to seize vantage points that would allow them to direct their artillery fire with deadly precision. The introduction of chemical warfare, through the deployment of poison gas alongside the terrifying use of flamethrowers, added new dimensions of horror to the battlefield. Yet, these technological terrors, while devastating, failed to break the stalemate, with both factions unable to clinch a decisive victory. Although there was use of flamethrowers, gas, tanks, snipers, and more, the extensive use of artillery shells transformed the landscape into a desolate moonscape. It is estimated that more than 2,500 artillery guns were deployed to destroy the enemy formations. Grim layers of defensive measures like barbed wire and sniper traps made no man's land a deadly obstacle course if a path through were even possible. Despite these innovations, the battle ultimately degenerated into a war of attrition. A pivotal moment in the battle unfolded during the summer months, as the broader conflict shifted its focus to the Battle of the Somme. This significant redirection of the war's focus compelled the German High Command to reallocate resources away from Verdun, providing the beleaguered French forces with a much-needed respite. Seizing this opportunity, the French army embarked on a series of counter-offensives aimed at recapturing lost territory. The fortresses of Douaumont and Vaux, once symbols of French despair, were reclaimed in a series of daring assaults, epitomizing the resilience and indomitable spirit of the French army. In the chilling winter of 1916, the echoes of battle resounded once more across Verdun, as the French forces, under the strategic guidance of Pétain and Nivelle and the direct command of Menacing, launched the second offensive Battle of Verdun. The French artillery unleashed a torrent of over 1 million shells in a 6-day bombardment, a prelude to the infantry's advance, which commenced under the watchful eyes of artillery observation aircraft. The French advance was heralded by a double creeping barrage that intertwined shrapnel fire shells and high-explosive rounds, a deadly dance designed to sever the Germans from their retreat and reinforcements. This barrage, notably marked by the lethal precision of shrapnel artillery, tore through the German lines with ruthless efficiency. The undermanned German divisions, outnumbered and outgunned, crumbled under the relentless French offensive, resulting in the capture of 13,500 German soldiers. By the twilight of December 16th, the French had not only breached the German defenses, but had also redefined the front lines, pushing the closest German positions back and recapturing the vantage points that once allowed German observers to rain artillery fire down upon Verdun. The human cost of Verdun was monumental, with French casualties estimated at around 377,000, including many killed, wounded, or missing. German losses were similarly devastating, with approximately 337,000 casualties. The battle's length and intensity made it a symbol of national endurance for France and a grim reminder of the Great War's senseless slaughter. The battle highlighted the importance of logistics, artillery, and the evolving tactics of trench warfare. As we continue to navigate the challenges of the 21st century, the lessons of Verdun, both technological and human, remain as relevant as ever, guiding us toward a future where such devastation can, hopefully, be averted, and such traps and weapons need not be necessary. But it would be wise to understand more about the origins of the many World War I weapons mentioned in this film, and thus the Raven recommends subscribing and clicking on this video to activate your third eye to history.